Alright, it is now time to go over Morbius, who is one of the most anticipated characters pretty much ever, right? Because with Morbius, we have a 7-star version pretty much on the way for most players at least. If you're not like a huge spender, then you might not have them ready, but I feel like most players do have a 7-star Morbius just waiting for them next month, and myself included. So I was pretty nervous going into this deep dive, but after watching it, I can tell you that I am pretty dang satisfied with this champion. And another thing that I was worried about was just how powerful his Awaken Ability will be. And that is one thing where, yeah, we have to talk about that for sure, because that signature ability looks pretty nuts. So let's just get started here. Let's go over the unawakened kit of Morbius. So I've seen a lot of comparisons for Morbius, and they're saying he is like a mix of Kitty Pryde and Void with a small dabble of Hercules. So just let that sink in before I get started here, that this man is being compared to some of the best champions in the game, and then Void. No offense to the Void fans out there, but yeah, him like next to Herc and Kitty just seems so weird. However, let's go over why he is being compared to these champions. So first off, he has a glide mechanic, right? And this glide lets you miss any attack while you are dashing forward. So that's really strong, right? That's just like Kitty's phase. However, when he completes a glide, he gains a favor buff. I don't know how to say it. It's like this one buff that increases your ability accuracy of damaging debuffs. And once he gains that, he cannot glide while it's active. And that buff lasts 10 seconds. So his phasing pretty much has a cooldown of 10 seconds per activation, while Kitty Pryde's has like 0. So the balance is definitely there, which is a good thing, right? Because Kitty Pryde is way too good. And additionally, he is all about stacking bleeds, but not necessarily bleeds all the time. More on that later. So he has bleeds on regular hits, and he has bleeds whenever he phases through a special attack, and this inflicts like 4 extra bleeds or something. It's pretty good. And whenever he has bleeds on the opponent, if he has 10 of them, he inflicts a petrify of 25% potency, and additionally, for each bleed on the opponent, he reduces their ability power rate and the regen rate by 5% up to a maximum of 50%. So not too shabby at all. And he doesn't really have the despair mastery. It gets disabled, and instead of that, you get bonus reduction for each bleed on the opponent. I don't know if it still caps out at 50%. If it does, then that kind of is not too good. But if it doesn't, then yeah, pretty dang strong. But now let's go over the special attacks. So the SP1 just inflicts bleeds, from what I remember. I think it was just like, yeah, it inflicts bleeds, so it helps the ramp up. But it also removes your buff that you have whenever you finish a phase, so that lets you begin phasing immediately afterwards. So that's pretty cool. The SP1 seems to be great for ramp up and just for maintaining like your phasing. And the SP2 is the big one. It is like the big damage dealer, because if a petrify is on the opponent, the second hit of the SP2 is a guaranteed crit, and it gets increased attack rating per bleed on the opponent, up to 40 bleeds. And additionally, this life steals the damage dealt. However, it is capped at 10% of its maximum health. So this is pretty good, right? You cash in your bleeds for some pretty massive SP2 damage, and from the looks of it, it is pretty strong. I think I was seeing like 170,000 on the Morbius SP2 hit, which is really good. And the best part is, you can just rebuild to the SP2 quite often. So like each SP2 will just do a ton of damage for you. So it does look pretty promising overall. He does look made for more bursty fights like battlegrounds and whatnot. But I'm excited, man, because having guaranteed crits means that his damage output is pretty much not randomized in the slightest. So that's always a good thing to have. And the SP3 is very, very cool also, because it does increase damage per bleed on the opponent as well, but this doesn't remove any of your debuffs. It keeps them active, actually. So this is honestly a massive win, because usually champions that have like a big burst of damage consume everything afterwards, but with Morbius's SP3, you don't do that, right? You just keep all your debuffs. So the damage output of Morbius looks pretty good, and the ramp up seems not too bad either. So unawakened, he seems like a pretty solid champion. He has the phase, he has the good damage overall, he does have the petrify and like the regen rate and ability power rate reduction as well. So he has some good science tropes and some other very unique stuff as well that is not too common for a science champion, like the phasing, right? So like I said, Unawakened seems pretty good. However, let's talk about the Awakened ability of Morbius, because this seems a bit wild. So when he's awakened, he inflicts Rupture against bleed immune opponents, which is always a great thing, because some mystic characters are bleed immune. For example, Man-Thing, Mcoc, really good defenders that are mystic that he can now take if he's awakened, right? So that's always a nice thing to have. I wish it was on base kit, but it's fine. But here is where things get a bit wild. So if he is suffering from a damaging effect, he regens 50% of the damage taken from said effect. And while he is suffering from a damaging effect, he cannot be knocked out by it. So before you say anything about Hercules and his immortality, this isn't like that, because Morbius can get knocked out by any regular hits, right? But if you are one of the best players out there, or just like a really good player in general, you can just maintain your life by just intercepting, using his phase mechanic to try to get easy openings, and just keep the fight going by not getting hit at all, like not even blocked hits, right? So this does seem a bit overpowered, because if you are a pretty good player, you can really extend like the amount of time you're in a fight. And as far as I'm aware, this includes the recoil mastery. So Liquid Courage is a permanent poison debuff on you, so you will always have that Undying passive active, which is just really, really strong. And I think he's going to be one of the best champions to have the recoil masteries on with, because you cannot, like, you can't die from it, right? You can just stay alive and regen 50% of the damage taken from that debuff too. So this honestly does seem really, really strong. And I mean, look, we got 7-star Morbius for like $25. So having a good Unawakened kit, that's already a huge plus, right? They could have just made him a nothing burger when he's unawakened and then put the whole kit behind his Awaken ability. But they just made the Unawakened kit really good, but a really strong Awaken ability to help, I guess, entice the whales to go for his dupe, or to just make him a good pull whenever you open a Titan Crystal or something. So I think overall this was a good thing to do by Kabam, to make him a good champion Unawakened, but also have a really enticing Awaken ability. So I'm a fan of his design overall. I think he looks pretty good. Unawakened has some great damage output, has some good phasing mechanics, and some good ability power rate and regen rate modification. And when he's awakened, has that really, really interesting Undying passive. So let me know your thoughts on Morbius, and yeah, that's about it for me.